Hi everybody, thanks for joining us tonight. This is going to be the start of a monthly series we're doing where we sit down with two founders who we've had the pleasure of working with. We're going to be talking about their journeys, challenges that they've faced along the way, and then more importantly, how they've overcome them. So a bit of housekeeping. We've got a chat function just to the bottom here, just next to the share screen. So just drop in, make an introduction, let everybody know that you're here. We also have a Q&A just to the right of it, just there. So make sure you drop in some questions or any concerns that you have or any problems that you're facing at the moment. And we'll see if we can get some answers to those in the panel. Otherwise, if we don't manage to get round to them, we've also got Kendall just here and Diego also just here as well. So hopefully they can follow up with you and get an answer to those. So yeah, we're going to kick off with an introduction from Jacob, who's the founder and creative director of Vitamin London, our studio.
Cool. Charlotte, I have just had a couple of people trying to get in. Andy was trying to get in. So yeah, I don't know whether we can let
I'll sort it out in the background.
All right, thanks. Hi everyone. Yeah, thank you for all of your questionnaire responses. We read them with intrigue. We're very keen to hear more as well. But yeah, as Charlotte said, welcome to the first event in our Meet the Founders series. We've got two brilliant founders with us this evening. Moritz did something unusual in startup land, and he started making money quite early on from the beginning. Did a decent amount of sales in year one and even better in year two. I won't go into too much detail or spoil any surprises. And then we have Tim as well, who's the founder of Codices and a product called QuizKit. And I received his latest shareholders update on June the 8th and noticed that QuizKit had just surpassed a major milestone in getting over 1 million monthly views in May. But they'll be able to give you a lot more detail very shortly. From our side, and to give a bit of context as to why we're running these events, Vitamin was founded in 2011. We've been working with startups since then. But it was a client agency relationship and we wanted to go a bit further. We saw all these people having loads of fun and we wanted to get more involved. So we started partnering with clients, and that was on a longer term basis through a variety of different mechanisms, whether it was at discounting fees, and that's kind of how we started working with Moritz, through SEIS and EIS investments, even some cash investments like with Codices and Tim. But this has given us many advisory positions, lots of experience in the sector, but predominantly Vitamin is a product agency. We focus on brand strategy, UX, UI, and build. We've also, I think, got some people joining us tonight from who we've been working with for a while. I think we've got Andy, the racing manager, who hopefully we'll hear from in a bit of time, and a few other clients and partners. This has also led to the formation of Vitamin Ventures, which is a completely unique pre-seed and seed venture model that we are working with. So if any of you would like to discuss that, please get in touch with me directly or drop Kendall or Diego a note. So let's get on with it and hear from the people who we're here to hear from. And I think we're starting with Moritz, aren't we?
Might be.
Oh.
Hi, yeah, I'm Moritz, the founder of Nosbox. We are now actually more or less exactly 2 years old as a company. And yeah, I have quite an e-commerce background. Formerly worked at Eve Sleep, one of those annoying mattress companies you see all over London or the UK, the yellow one. So at the time, I kind of like thought always they spent a ridiculous amount of money on marketing. So I set out to found an e-commerce company which doesn't spend that much money on marketing. So how we actually did that is not coming up with a product idea first, but the idea was something that has sustainable unit economics, and then find through kind of like a bit of research the product. We kind of thought about very early on about selling essentials, so everyday essentials, which are not normally profitable on Facebook or AdWords. Let's say, I don't know, this glass as an example. you can't sell a glass on Facebook. It just doesn't make sense with the unit economics, because this costs maybe like £3 or something. So delivery would be more expensive than the glass itself. So what we did then essentially is we thought about bundling everyday essentials together. So lots of items everybody needs to like some form of curated starter kits. And then we came up with the very first starter kit, which was a student starter kit. So students moving to university, which always happens in August, September. This year might be a little bit different, but normally it's August, September. And we provide them with everything they need. So let it be saucepans, frying pan, bedding, pillows, whatsoever, also glasses. So everything you need to hit the ground running at university. And the idea was essentially do it without initial funding. So we really kind of like paid attention to finding, do like keyword research and everything before we actually launched the product. So because obviously we need performance marketing as an e-commerce company, so like Facebook, AdWords. So essentially what we did, we checked how much is the cost per click before on like, let's say, or everything student related or everything starter kit related. And then we thought we can build the product around this. So we did all the research before on the marketing side, which I think is kind of unique for a startup, that you kind of have the ability or like the opportunity actually to verify your marketing cost before you go live. And then 2 years later now, we have seen some growth. We just today rebranded. So if you look at the website, this actually went live this morning. Before it was also called Noah, just looked a little bit different. And we're now kicking off our third year in business, and it's growing quite fast, especially right now during the whole shutdown or lockdown. Obviously starter kits is something people want, especially if they move houses. Nobody goes to IKEA at the moment. So we're growing, like, I think last month was like 120% months over months or something. And we actually ran out of stock. So actually, I think we could have hit a bit more. But that's what kind of Jacob said at the beginning, is a rather kind of unique story. We haven't done any funding yet. We worked with Jacob's team at the very beginning to kind of like get our Shopify store up and running, do some branding. They did an amazing like technology piece. So we offer also like one piece on the website, which actually is doing really well, is where you can build your own starter kit. So if you say, I don't want non-stick saucepans, you can just swap them. And that's it kind of for now. We just got our first team members during lockdown, really awkward. Never met them before. We hired them. And that's kind of it where we are at the moment.
Thanks, Moritz. We do have some relevant questions that have been sent over in advance, but what I thought I'd do is, get both of you answering questions at the end, if that's okay. So, yeah, Tim, sure. Can you give us a bit of an intro into Codices, QuizKit, and how you got to where you are?
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, I've gone for a slightly different format with some videos and stuff as well. Obviously, being the first sort of founder's intro, I've taken a slightly different approach, but hopefully it should still be interesting as well. So to give a quick intro to what we do, our mission really is to build the live interactive shows of the future. And like Moritz, we're also about 2 years old, I think, this month. But rather than sort of tell you about it, I think it'd be good just show you a quick video. And this is one of the recent shows we did with Amazon Prime and the Premier League just last year. And what you're going to see happening is the audience are being asked a question, and they all vote, sort of like ask the audience and who wants to be a millionaire, and the streamer decides whether to go with them or against them. And it's quite a cool format, and I'll just show you a quick video of that now, just so you get an idea of sort of what we do. Oof. Oh wait, you can't hear any audio.
I can't. No, sorry, I was
terrible.
It was very quiet.
that is because, 1 second. You can't hear it because it was quiet, or you can't hear it because...
I could hear it very, very quietly.
I thought we heard it actually through your headset, I believe.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Otherwise, just narrate. Is it for everyone that the camera is now awkwardly on me? Or is it just... Yeah.
Yeah, the camera's just on you.
Okay, that's a bit awkward. I think, Tim, you have to say something to this camera switch again. Otherwise, it's just sticking on me without video sound.
Could you not hear anything then either? No.
No, unfortunately.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll skip the video. I'll skip the video for now. But so basically, what we do is we make live interactive shows for brands and companies. So what we do is we also have a product called QuizKit, and it basically allows anyone to make their own live interactive show. And currently, we've got about 1 million monthly viewers on our quiz shows and about 4,000 different broadcasters. We're just currently now in the process of closing our seed round. We're going through the last legals of around £650,000. So it's been a while raising that. So initially I thought a good thing to do is, I know if there's other founders and people looking to do things here, if you do want to get in touch with me, talk through any ideas or anything sort of resonates to you in this presentation, that's my email. So feel free to drop me a note. I think one of the key things is, particularly as a founder, is you get a lot of advice from everyone all the time. And one thing you've sort of got to do is, it's always good to sort of pick people, I think, when you're looking to talk to people who've done similar things before. So if you are looking into live streaming or the same stuff we're doing, then feel free to ask. And also just a caveat, like, please don't take anything I say as sort of face value, and do sort of challenge things, because what worked for me, doesn't necessarily work for everyone else, particularly with startups. It's like as simple or as complex as you want to make it when you're setting things out. And we're very much at the beginning of our journey now. But we've had some successes, but there's still a long way to go for us, I think, in really achieving what we want to do. But to a quick overview. So in terms of my background, so I started out as an engineer. I did a sort of computing degree at university, and then I moved to Spain, where I worked for a startup there for about 6 months. I got bored of programming, and then moved back to the UK, moved into sort of biz dev role for an IT supplier, where we were sort of selling computers and servers and infrastructure to B2B clients. And I eventually moved into business development for a game studio, where I eventually worked as a junior producer, sort of at the beginning wave of VR. And I saw that company grow to we did about 600K in revenue in our first year doing cool VR shows. The best one we did was with Adventure Time, which is owned by Turner Media, and we made the first Google Cardboard VR game, which won a BAFTA, or it didn't win a BAFTA, it was BAFTA nominated. And the year after, unfortunately, that all fell apart and collapsed. So I had a good sort of experience across the whole life cycle of sort of seeing something grow. I wasn't a founder there, but I was partly on the team. And at the same time I was there, I also worked at a company called Game Debate. So what they are is, it's a live gaming website, and I used to run a live game stream for them. And I've got a picture here, actually. This is me a lot younger and thinner running our live game show. It was pretty crazy. So we did it for about 6 months. We ended up getting up to around 20,000 concurrent viewers, because we were embedded in the site. And it was it was really interesting to see that side of stuff with Twitch. And also being super nerdy, I had my PC spec just below my name as well, which was a good spec for about 2015 or 16, I think, when we were doing that. So eventually I left those roles. I then had my own agency for about 6 months or so, where we were doing some sort of cool VR projects, but really I wanted to move on to something a bit bigger. And for me, because I'd always worked making stuff for other people, I really wanted to make a product or something that I wanted to do. So it was coming to the end of the agency time. I was literally scrolling through Facebook, and I saw an advert for a program called Launchpad. And in essence, it was a program based in Cornwall where they pay you to come down. They give you 16K stipend, And you're able to then spend a year working on your own startup and building out, basically working with people and building out what you want. So in a way, that sort of gave me, it's a very different approach, I think, because I had about a year or so to really refine and focus on what idea was going to be and what sort of eventually Codices became. When I first went there, it really shifted my perspective quite a bit because I'd worked in smaller businesses, I'd never really thought about the bigger picture. And we had a VC come and talk to us, and he basically said the kind of companies they're looking into investing are companies that get to like 100 million revenue in 10 years time. And that sort of set me up then on quite a different way of thinking. So rather than thinking about how can we make money now, how can we do stuff, it's thinking about this sort of big 10-year vision. And when we sort of came down to what the problem is or what thing we're going to solve, we did get supplied challenges through the program. So one of them was from Amazon, and they initially wanted us to build out a tool for their game engine Lumberyard, which no one really used, unfortunately. And they wanted us to connect into their live streaming platform, Twitch. And the idea was that we'd sell that then to game developers. But we looked at the market. We didn't really think that it was that interesting to do. There might be a £1 million business there now, but we decided to move on from that. At the same time, we had a challenge also from the BBC, which is around, what's the future of entertainment and TV going to be? And the one thing, what I really noticed then is that Twitch definitely is sort of the next evolution of where entertainment's going in terms of like live video. And we sort of came up with this problem, if you look at a Twitch audience, it's like 20 to 30,000 people on like a big stream, but they're all watching someone playing one thing. What kind of game or content could you have where everyone watching is all participating and playing in? And when we started looking at the TV audiences and the scales, it sort of came down to, what's a game that 1 million people could all play together at the same time? And around this time as well, there was also another app which had just launched called HQ Trivia. And if you don't know what it is, it was like a live quiz app. So I've got it on the screen here. So it basically would show up, people would turn up and answer questions. And if you got them right, you'd win a prize. They ran it twice a day. They're based out of the United States. And I think they raised about 20 million or so initially to start funding it. And they were sort of really the first guys to properly reinvent this kind of new format shows. And when you look at the growth they were doing as well, so this is like a growth over time. And we were watching this at the same time we were concepting, and it was just going up and up and up. And I think they peaked eventually about 2.2 million concurrent players. So we definitely felt like, these interactive shows are something that people want. It's a growing market. And at the moment, there's not really anyone doing anything in it. The other sort of different take we had to it is that I think when you look at what people are watching now, it's not like big shiny shows on TV and anyone, it is sort of Netflix and stuff. But the fastest growing areas are people like YouTubers, people on Vine when that used to exist, and now like TikTok. And the thing is that all these people that are producing the most watched content now, they're not given any tools or anything to be able to build interactive shows. So that was sort of the first way we came up with our problem. We thought, well, let's give broadcasters a way to create their own game shows. So we went back to Amazon, we pitched it to them, said, we don't want to do your idea. We think what would be cool is like a Twitch product where people could make their own games, make their own game shows and have their audience play with them. And we were very lucky because at the same time, Twitch were just launching a product called Extensions where we could build video overlays on top of Twitch streams. So pitched the idea, they said, they went and did some due diligence and they came back and said, yeah, we really like it. And we'd love you to fly it to LA to sort of talk to us about it. And we gave us some free tickets to TwitchCon, which is their big event. So a few weeks later, we flew out to LA. We went down to like a developer day. And it was crazy because it was like us there and then all these other really, really big games companies that were looking at making different games. So there's guys from like Capcom and Gearbox and Bungie. And it was pretty insane to be sat in the same room as them, sort of listening to the same stuff about how they're building extensions. And the next day we went to meet the person that invited us and he ended up standing us up. So we ended up not speaking to anyone at Twitch about our idea then. But on the last day we were there, I saw the CEO who was sort of stood by a stand and he was talking to people. He wasn't super busy. And I went up to him, I introduced myself and said, this is what we're looking to build. And he gave us like a bit of feedback and things, which was quite good. Sort of like, you can tell he gets approached a lot for like ideas and things. So sort of inspired by that, we came back. When we were back, I had about 5 or 6 months left on the program. And, we were really set on the, what's this game 1 million people are going to play? What are these formats going to be? And we spent like a good 2 or 3 months like concepting and coming up with all these different ideas before we eventually settled on a quiz, because everyone loves quizzes. It'd be much easier to do like a minimum viable product to get out there on Twitch. And it also, I think that's something that people could easily create. You can make lots of content for as well. So after settling on that, we sort of came to the end of the program. All the people on my team ended up leaving for various reasons. So I sort of left on my own, and I needed to find a technical co-founder to sort of help me. So at that point, I was quite lucky. So I met Fern, who was, he was previously a technician on the program, and he used to work at Amazon and like a load of other sort of big tech startups in California. He moved down to Cornwall because his wife was originally from here. So I was lucky to meet him. And after I spoke to him about the idea, he said, yeah, happy to come on as your co-founder. So we arranged like an equity. So he came on board and helped us build out the first version. At this point, I was already talking to VCs and things to get funding, but we were still very early in pre-product. Off the back of that, I managed to raise about £50,000 initially on an 800,000 valuation before we had anything really in terms of like product substance. Our first investors was one of the investment managers we had. Also, we had a local businesswoman who previously just sold her business, and she met up with me. I sort of spoke through our idea, what we wanted to do. And I think from her perspective, she could see that even though I'm quite good on some of the tech side and building stuff, that when it comes to a lot of the business administration side and that kind of stuff, that I didn't really have any experience on. So she gave us a lot of help in terms of giving us cash initially and also support to build stuff out. And off the back of that, we hired some contractors in to help us build the first version of our product. And I went to a conference later that year where I met a guy called David Osborne. And he was one of the founders of the studios who made Guitar Hero, the later Guitar Hero games, and DJ Hero. And he sold that to Activision Blizzard. And it was kind of crazy because he was also looking at these kind of extensions of these games that all people could play at the same time. So he eventually, I met up with him a few times, and we showed him, we got our first prototype working, which I'll show you because it's quite funny, because it's really, really basic. So this is what we this is what we showed him, which is basically our first little app running on Twitch. So up here, when they're clicking here, this is the person controlling the quiz show. And as he clicks it, you've got like icons and things appearing down here. And super, super primitive, like really first version, whatever. But the idea of this was really that, we could build something that would work on Twitch and would overlay the video stream as well. And off the back of this, I think we raised another 20 grand just off this video. So I thought that would be a good, interesting benchmark to see, you don't necessarily need like a really complete polished product, but just to sort of show that technically we could deliver what we could do. So we ended up launching the product in October. We had our first streamer use it. It looked a bit different. If I skip ahead here, it should. So this is like one of the first shows he ran with a proper big audience. This is like, so the UI changed a bit. We put in some other stuff. So it was like a knockout round. So at the end, if you lost it, you didn't get any, you were just sort of out the quiz. And we had lots of fun little bugs and interesting things with this as we built it out. But they were sort of our first shows we did after we launched it. And off the back of launching this, I then went back to, I ended up going to San Jose, sort of around Silicon Valley, where there was another TwitchCon going on. And I brought a load of flyers with me. We also brought someone on the team, we paid him about £1,000 just to go out and cold reach the streamers to try and get them to use it. And while I was there, I went to another developer event there, and luckily I walked into the CEO again and said, hi, do you remember who I am? That app I spoke about last year, we built it, we've got it. And he sort of said that was cool. And he took my email from there and said, let's catch up after the event. And a few weeks later, he emailed me back saying, yeah, I'm in London, let's meet up and talk. So met with him in London. I sort of spoke to him for about 40 minutes, super crazy inspirational stuff, because he went through Y Combinator. He was one of the original founders of Twitch, and it's still a CEO as well, which is quite rare, especially when you're at that later stage of a company. And off the back of the meeting, he really liked what we did. He hooked me up with their business development manager at Twitch, and they gave us our first client, which was Jagex, who made the game RuneScape. And we worked with them to build out like a custom skin for their shows. And since then, we've just kept on building our clients up on the licensing side. So we've now got a licensing model where people rent our infrastructure office to run game shows. And we've done stuff with like Amazon Prime, the Premier League, as I showed you guys before. We've got some stuff coming up with Warframe as well, which is going to be really cool, which is a really big game. And we also work with Twitch directly now. So we're just about to sign, or we just have signed a very long licensing deal with Twitch to produce sort of new content and shows for them. So everything sort of came off the back of that meeting initially, and so a lot of the connections we've grown within Twitch from sort of networking and meeting other people. And yeah, in terms of people we brought on, so early on I brought on a COO called Nick Hall, and he was the digital director for Endemol Shine. So he ran the digital teams behind Big Brother, £1 Million Drop, and a load of those other kinds of shows. And he originally came on. He's temporarily, and he's still not working for us now, but not in a COO role. And as HQ Trivia closed down, which is that big show, they ended up closing down in London. And we were quite lucky where the guy who used to run all their shows in Europe then joined us after that as our head of content as well. So we've really looked to specialize and bring people in, particularly from TV and this interactive show background, to help sort of bolster our offering alongside the more traditional game streaming side of things. And yeah, I mean, we don't really market that much. So because we've now got so many users, the interesting thing is when someone runs a quiz show or an interactive show, that's basically marketing for us. So we just find the more people that use it, the more incoming licensing stuff we get. And at the moment, we've got a bit too much to handle in terms of projects coming in, which is a really good sign because we just know there's quite big demand for doing these interactive shows, particularly now. And yeah, I mean, I think I spent the whole time constantly fundraising, trying to get bits of cash in, and we probably raised another 80 grand or so between then and now. And we're just about to take in about 650K's worth of seed round once our legal stuff's done. So yeah, I think that's probably like a brief overview. I probably spoke too long and too much there, but gives you an idea of like the journey we've come on in terms of our products and stuff.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. Two very different businesses and different journeys, it sounds like, as well. I do have a couple of questions, if that's all right, because you gave us a bit of background as to what you were doing before, how you ended up there. I think a couple of people were interested in the actual trigger point when you made the decision to go, right, I'm now doing it, because we speak to a lot of people, they're thinking about it, they've got the idea, but it's when you actually commit to it. It's maybe slightly worried that it's not the right time, the economy's not heading in the right direction. So yeah, what was your trigger point?
To me, sorry?
To Tim first, if that's all right, and then sure. To you. Right, so.
Yeah. I think just after I left my other company and saw it fail, I sort of thought I could probably do better than my boss, and that was probably my first motivator to it.
No one at Vitamins felt like that.
You see people laugh.
I mean, once we started looking into the markets and looking, seeing, is TV and entertainment going this way where everyone's going to interact? I never really had any doubt in my mind, particularly seeing the HQ Trivia numbers and all the research we were doing around live streaming and the growth. So, yeah, I mean, because once I sort of joined the incubator and we set on our idea, I was felt like very gung-ho, like this is what's going to work. And yeah, I just think I grew up watching lots of streams and things, and yeah, I think in terms of timing, it just seemed like completely the right thing to do. And the important thing I think for me was at the end of the program when that stipend ended and we had to say, right, do I continue with this or do I go and do something else? And at that point, all the signs in terms of the market and stuff, and just seeing no one else really doing this stuff yet is what sort of drove me. So yeah, just seeing like a good opportunity. And I always wanted to, before I started doing anything, I did want to start my own business anyway. And that was at the forefront of my mind probably for about a year or two before I ended up joining the program.
It's a long build-up, not a sudden overnight revelation. No. How about yourself, Moritz? I think I've got a bit more of an idea as to your trigger point, but yeah.
First of all, I feel really bad for my intro. It seems really short now. I said it like...
I'm sorry.
I already felt like I said too much. I felt like I would talk too much, but fair enough. No. Sounded super interesting. I'm a big Twitch viewer, so I love that all. But yeah, for me, it was actually... As I said earlier, I worked at Eve Sleep, which was at the time was a company which went from within 2.5 years from zero to like IPO at like 150 million. I was one of the early guys who joined them, took over the entire tech team. They have like 15, 20 people, and I've never worked in e-commerce before. But it was really similar then. What Tim said is like I thought like something is really wrong here. I can do better, because at the time, when we IPO'd, so at 150 million evaluation, they actually, for every mattress sold, let's say we get a mattress for £500, they were spending £600 on Facebook So for every mattress you bought, they lost £100 on marketing, plus £200 on product cost, plus 150 on costs. So for every mattress sold, they lost like 350, £400. And I was sitting there and I was like, how is this a business? How do people give you money? That sounds stupid. But it worked. And it worked actually because the founders were really convincing.
Did it do well? It's not working too well now if you look at this.
No, it's not working too well now. So another example is Casper in the US. You just have to look at the share prices. So Eve went from 140p to 2p now. So they're, what is that, like 2% of the value from like 2 years ago or something. That dropped crazy. Casper, which I think IPO'd at 750 million, directly dropped to like 200, 300 million immediately on the day they IPO'd. And I think it's because it's quite a different business model to Tim, right? Where it's about generating revenue. You have physical goods, you want to send them out. It's not market penetration, that doesn't exist with mattresses, which is a one-time purchase. You're not like buy a mattress and then 3 months later you're like buy another one. It just doesn't work like that. So it was this kind of revelation, which I initially didn't realize. So I just quit. I quit to actually sell my shares because it was not allowed when I was in the company. So I quit, joined another e-commerce company, Heist at the time. They do like woman hosiery, like tights. I don't know if I can say that because they're not a public company. Stuff you can read up. But they also had CPAs, so like the cost per acquisition on Facebook, were also horrible. So I essentially just stood up one day and said bye. Like that's literally how it happened. I stood up and I never saw them again. They were really upset that I said, because it was the last day of my notice period. 3 months I was only there. So on the last day I said, hey guys, I don't think actually this is going to work out for you. So I don't think you're going to make it.
Didn't say for me.
Yeah, for them. Like I was like, the company doesn't work. I don't see this business model because they lost even more money than Eve. It's incredible. So I thought it's just not a business model I want to work with, like kind of the approach they have. They were a bit upset about it. They said, yeah, you can leave now. So that was literally the last moment in the company. So I had no job. I had a week notice period or something like that. And then I was like coming home to my girlfriend and was like, I don't know, I think I have to start my own company. And as I said, we actually didn't have the idea. We actually went back and said, we have to find an e-commerce product that works without enormous amount of funding and without burning through a lot of cash, where you can just live from. So I found a co-founder, Harvey, who does all the operational stuff, brilliant guy. And we kind of together just went for it. Met with Jacob at the time to get some of the tech pieces done because we're not the most techie guys from a development perspective. So they helped us with that. And then kind of like bootstrapped it until today, which kind of works really nice. Obviously, funding is always really cool. I would love to have it, but not in the way how some other e-commerce companies use it. I think for me, there's a clear differentiation between that. And that's why I was like, I never want to do e-commerce again, or I do it for myself and do it without having CPAs, which are incredibly high. So that was essentially the driver, was like, I go into something way more tech focused. So I actually studied business informatics, which is nothing that exists here in the UK. So I'm German, as you can tell from my accent, maybe. So I studied actually something quite techy, but also the business side of things. So it has all the economics part, but at the same time, I can actually develop. It's really shitty what I develop. It's just like some JavaScript and stuff, like really, really shitty and basic. But it gives you like kind of like an e-commerce quite an advantage, because most people I see in e-commerce, they come from a consulting business. Like literally every e-commerce founder I met comes from a consulting background, and they're really numbers focused. But if you can't make the numbers work, you just get into the spiral of like the CPA goes up. You get an investor, you have to hit revenue targets, you can't get the CPA down, the CPA goes up. It's just like a horrible spiral, and that's kind of why we founded this.
Moritz, can I ask you about some of those numbers? Because we've had questions sent in before about, like, once you've got product, that's great, but how do you then sell it? And I always thought that you were particularly attuned to this. You knew exactly how you were going to sell this product, because that was almost the founding thought before you even got going. But can you give us some numbers, like acquisition at first, what that's turned into now?
Yeah, so we started actually, as I said, with checking cost per click. then from kind of like the e-commerce experience in this segment based on the average order value, which is like at £200 roughly for us, we kind of said, okay, we need that many visitors on an average e-commerce conversion rate, which we actually at the time, I think we just said 1%, which is not even outrageously good.
Yes, more.
But we were just like, all right, take the average of that and kind of calculate it. So it might be together that I'm like really German, like I really like if like the numbers all click and it's already prepared. So essentially I said it just works on paper. So if the numbers are there roughly, it will work out really nicely. And that was performance marketing, mainly AdWords. Facebook is way more volatile. So we actually just do retargeting there. We're starting now with some prospecting, but everything is on AdWords because I can calculate it super easily what's happening in there. And then super randomly, I didn't even know that exists here in the UK. I was introduced to UCAS, which is obviously the organization here in the UK for students. I didn't know it exists. So I met the guy and he explained to me what he is doing, like one of the sales rep from UCAS, because they have like a commercial arm. And I was like, what the fuck? Yeah. And then we had like a CPA of like 20-25%. So that means if you have an AOV of 200, so our average order value is 200, we spent like 50 quid on customer acquisition. So which meant we are still profitable based on the unit economics.
And that was at first?
That was at first. At the moment, it drops quite a bit. When we partnered with the UCAS, it just was incredible. We had like a return on investment of like on Facebook and AdWords all of the sudden of like 30 times. So our acquisition cost dropped to like 4 or 5%. And that's essentially, that was kind of lucky that UCAS exists here in the UK because it makes the whole targeting a little bit easier with those guys. But obviously that's the reason why we can self-fund this, because our acquisition cost just dropped enormously. The mixed cost right now is still like 15-17%, which is still really good, I believe, for an e-commerce business, especially because our AOV is the average order value is quite high. So something like delivery doesn't really matter. It's like £5, which is, it matters, but that's like 2.5%. So it's a different business model, like something like selling t-shirts or something, where you maybe make like 15 quid, you sell one t-shirt and the unit economics are way more tight. So you have to be really rigid with your budget, where for us, it's a bit more flexible. And now we kind of can use the money to expand our product range and have more and more starter kits. So essentially the idea is to not just have student or kitchenware starter kits, but have like a starter kit for every situation. So we had actually, for this summer, we had a partnership with one of the biggest ticket providers in the UK, or actually in Europe, so festival tickets. And we were supposed to launch like a festival starter kit, so like a small string bag with like all the essentials in there you need for like a festival. I don't know, like first aid kit, glitter, condoms. I don't know what you need. That was not my part to deciding that. We did actually a survey to ask people, and condoms was really at the top of that. Quite high actually at the top of this. But that obviously fell through because COVID happened just before, like it happened a week before we wanted to purchase the stock. So that this all like kind of like beginning of March kind of like crystallized. So I was like, okay, let's hold back with the stock purchase. But
COVID's you've still been heading up during COVID, haven't you?
Yeah, but the kitchenware, so we doubled down on kitchenware. We launched a baking kit, which just flew off the shelf. Harvey, my co-founder, I'm pretty sure he doesn't like me anymore because I forced him to buy all the baking stuff in the UK. So like we sourced, he was hunting down people to sell him loaf pans because everybody does banana bread at the moment, like crazy. So we sourced thousands of loaf pan, and people were like, what the fuck, guys? We don't have this kind of stock in the UK. But the problem obviously for us is like, we can't wait 3-4 months to have physical goods from China coming in if you want to go on a trend. Obviously your unit economics are not as good, but worked out actually really nicely in the end, and still sells really well right now actually.
Okay, just on that, Tim, how's COVID been for you?
I can share a graph. It's probably good to show.
Yeah, gaming industry goes through the roof, I reckon.
Yeah. So this is like, so we were, to be fair, I think we were already growing before COVID hit. from like a poor Q3, but Q4 was good, and then Q1 was good. Then once COVID hit, yeah, we've almost doubled up to like just over 1 million monthly viewers now. Yeah, I mean, everything's shifted now, I think, because you're looking at people staying in more, people watching streams more, and it's matured our audience quite a bit. I mean, we in the West now, you know, live streaming is all video games, about 95% of it, but in the trends are slowly changing now with things like TikTok, and in Asia particularly, because they couldn't film lots of like live sets and things with people on, they've switched to doing interactive shows online. And for us, it's really good sort of market validation, particularly when everything goes back to normal, to see whether that stays the same and those shows stay the same in China, which would be good indications for us here. But yeah, it's really accelerated the growth, you know, in terms of, you know, we're doing a show next month with 500,000 players in, which is going to be our biggest show, which is, yeah, and that'll jump up our numbers quite a bit. But yeah, that's because they were going to do a big physical event and they stopped and they decided to do it all digital. So we are, yeah, very much, yeah, we've never been busier, and it's been interesting trying to be busier and switch to sort of working from home, because definitely development and things have slowed down rather than being in the office. But yeah, in terms of business stuff, then it's been fairly good.
Very nice. We've got one question here from Ross on tips for growing and motivating your team. I'm not sure, Moritz, you just said that you pretty much forced Harvey to go out and buy all the baking stuff.
I said it a bit nicer than that, but maybe actually not.
But yeah, I don't know, Moritz, do you want to expand on that? Do you have any tips for the team?
Yeah,
I know
we are not huge. We have 4 people now. So my co-founder and me, we onboarded the developer, and we have our designer now who just did the rebrands. If in case you looked at the website just recently, changed this morning, as I said, doing brilliant stuff. Still rolling this out now on social media and everything. So it still takes a little bit of time. But I think one of the drivers is actually giving everyone like kind of like their freedom. I always felt like in companies I worked in, it's like you always like, you actually don't own your area really. So they set targets. So in companies I worked at, those artificial targets set before you are actually even involved. And I thought always that's like kind of a shitty way to do it, like not asking at the very beginning of what you want to do. So when we hire people for one area, like the developer, he does all tech choices, even though we discuss them, but it's not I make a decision. Same with the design, like all of this is like actually not how I like it. Like the colors, I like them actually, obviously, but it's like it's his decision as a designer to have the last word on anything. It's really, he can decide to put out whatsoever he wants, because that's what we hire those people for, to kind of compensate for weaknesses the leadership team has. Also in this particular case, everyone has equity in the company, especially early on. I reckon that's always a good way to get people involved. So like kind of like an option scheme, which is not this artificially inflated option scheme with like 40 pages of like really complex lawyer stuff, but like a kind of honest approach of like, all right, you get this, you get this, you get this. That's like kind of like dumbed down, so even I understand what's happening in an option scheme. I think that's like always really nice, generally speaking.
How about yourself, Tim?
Yeah, I think definitely with the equity side and options, and that's something I always look to give. You know, the kind of people we want to work with and want to bring on are people that really focus on our long-term vision. I think even though we're quite small, we can't pay the highest salaries at the moment necessarily because we're starting out. But what we can do is, you know, if you write code and work with stuff with us, then you know millions of people are going to see it. I think even though we have quite big ambitions of what we want to do, so you know we talk about. Particularly even in our sector, there's not really much people doing stuff. So a lot of the formats and shows you make are sort of world first. So we definitely have this very big ambition with what we're trying to do. And I think even when you look at a lot of developer jobs where people are sort of making the same sort of, you know, complex systems and things that aren't super interesting, you know, what we can offer is quite a lot of excitement. And, you know, particularly when you spend a few weeks or months working something and then to see like 20, 30,000 people all play it and experience it at the same time, or to watch all the shows going on, you know, that's like the end goal. For me, I find that like the building stuff and the working it out and making it isn't like super fun. It just takes a while, but the fun bit is actually having it out there and having lots of people using it. So for me, it's about getting lots of little successes, little wins, and things we can sort of look at and say that we've done well. And I find that, that sort of just constant trying to look for big wins and ways we can sort of get lots of people to use stuff in between, looking at the vision is what we sort of keep people motivated with. And always keep that focus on, building cool stuff. I think for us, it's like we make game shows on live stream. It's just sort of fun and interesting anyway. Not many people ever get the chance to do that. And the fact that we've got investors and backers willing to, help fund us do it and really good growth is just exciting. So for me, I think it's just fun.
But if someone wasn't interested in game shows or live streaming, do you think that would be a negative in an interview because it might just be that much harder to engage them?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, maybe. Yeah. I'm very much feel like everyone should be sort of really focused on the vision and what the company is looking to do. Because if you're not really focused on that and energized by it, then you'd probably struggle to do the insane amount of work that we have to do to support all these users. Like we're like a 4-man development team, really full time at the moment, sorting out all these users and doing all these multiple projects. We've got 4 projects on the go now, so the work is incredibly hard. When we do shows in South Korea where you have to be up at like 2 or 3 in the morning, making sure everything's working, and watching your servers as tens of thousands of people are joining them to make sure everything works is probably the most stressful thing that I've ever done. And we have to do it daily with all the shows that are going on. So I think it's it's big risk, big reward for it. But you definitely need that passion for it because and that's what we look for when we recruit. So like I normally do an interview first, and then we'll pass it across to whoever's doing it, just to sort of gauge what their ambitions are and like what they want to do really in the long term.
That's it sounds like good advice. We've got a question from Andy asking if you've got any strategies to keep the competition at bay. Moritz, do you consider that you have much competition?
Not yet, Annie. So the interesting bit I thought, and that's also one of the bits, like as Tim said, which makes it a bit more exciting. There are not that many brands out there, or actually we don't know any brand who puts like providing starter kits as kind of the mission statement. So for us, we haven't come across any brands. Obviously, there are some brands. There's a brewery which has maybe like a homebrew starter kit or something. But there's not something which just says, all right, we do starter kits for any occasion kind of in life and provide like not just normal products, but just everything kind of like curated bundles.
Can I ask one question related to that? Because didn't Mark Andreessen, didn't he say we go through cycles and we're either bundling or we're unbundling and we're bundling? So lots of people start getting on that trend and then they'll pull back from it. Does that mean that maybe more people are going to be selling in an event-driven way, in a bundled way?
I think it makes, from a unit economics, it makes incredible sense, right? To bundle your stuff together. It's just the whole delivery, the operations is so much smoother. You see actually Amazon going into this sometimes, like you see with the recommendation where Amazon, their own products, like they say, all right, we put tableware and cookware together or something like this. So I think it's something that definitely happens more and more, and you can like capitalize on that. But at the moment, like to answer the question with the competition, we have some competition around student starter kits, but those are actually like more old-fashioned brands, like wholesalers who sell directly to the university and not direct to consumer. And I think like the best way to actually be is to offer like honest pricing for your users. So like referring back, you can tell I really hate the mattress industry, but referring back to that, like the mattress costs like nothing. It's a block of foam, which is created in the same factory, all of them. Every mattress you buy in the UK is, every memory foam mattress is developed and produced in Manchester or close by Manchester. There was even like the funny one where they had Emma Mattress, it's like a competitor of Eve, had a TV advertisement. In the background, there was an Eve box standing because they had a shot of the factory, and they're all factory. I think that's kind of like the thing is like being like super honest about the pricing. So we say those are like products which are cheaper than buying them individually. So it's honestly cheaper than buying them at John Lewis or something, and they're good quality products because we source from the same kind of like factories. But we don't hide it behind the brand. So we don't put on the product our own like Noah stamp and say like on the individual product. We put it on the outer box obviously, but not on the product and say now because we put our stamp on like the tin opener. Now the tin opener is worth 4 times as much. That's not true. The tin opener still costs just 80p to purchase on the market wholesale. So it doesn't inflate the price. I think that's like one of the things in e-commerce which helps, which obviously doesn't really apply to something like Twitch, I would think.
Yeah, Tim, what are your defense strategies against the competition?
So our main one is just learning faster than everyone else. So we take, because we have so many shows going on at the moment, and there's another company who I won't name who also did live shows, but they raised like 10 million or so, and they're doing shows every day to try and with different formats, and they get less viewership than us. And we're great because we don't even pay any video server costs. Everything we do is on Twitch. And alongside that, we can put out a new show format and have 4,000 broadcasters play out to 1 million people over a month and learn very quickly. So part of what QuizKits really put us in this good position where I would argue that we're probably the best people in the space at the moment to be able to test and validate new show formats, just because we've got that huge reach. And that really helps us keep ahead of people, I think. We've got new formats coming out a lot. I mean, like with Paul, he came from HQ Trivia, and like Nick from Endemol, as people leave these big companies in like big positions, we keep a note of that. We keep our ears down in terms of networks. I love bringing in like people like that who have experience in other types of industries, because with interactive shows, because it's so new, there's no rule book, no one knows exactly what works yet. So getting those people on that do know how stuff works is quite useful for me. I think on Twitch particularly, we are a monopoly in terms of quiz shows and interactive shows. No one else builds the toolkit that we have that does it. So,
but what are the barriers to entry of someone else coming in on Twitch?
There's like we find like a lot of agencies who try to do our type of solutions, like they'll build it out, but then it will crumble once you hit like a certain amount of viewers. Our infrastructure is built out and tested over 2 years or so. So there's that sort of technical side of it. I think, if we don't make any money from QuizKit yet, even though we are about to put in monetization. So there's definitely the cost barrier. I think, because we are a small team, we can adapt. We can definitely, if you look at bigger platforms and things, putting stuff in, we're probably able to move quite a bit faster because you don't have such big code bases. But it's really like, for me, I find the biggest defensibility when we're talking to clients and stuff is just, if the cool thing is in Asia now, the live streaming market is like super. It's not like one big player, it's about 5 big players, and they all have around 20% each. So in Asia, the market isn't like a winner takes all. And I'm a big believer that, if you have the best content or the best tools, that people will sort of gravitate towards that. So for me, it's just, making sure that we have better tools, make a better experience, and through all the shows we can do, and learnings, just be better than everyone else. And it's not the best defensibility because can't paint it. Yeah, but that's what we always strive to be. And so far, it's worked, and that's what we just keep on trying to do.
Cool. We've only got a couple of minutes left, but can I just quickly, what was your biggest mistake, Moritz?
I think really initially was, we said earlier, we didn't want to fundraise immediately. We just wanted to kind of bootstrap it. I think the issues we had...
Bootstrap it with all your shares from Eve Sleep that you got.
It wasn't that much. It was enough to found a small company and live a couple of months from that, but nothing to go nuts on it. But that's exactly what we did. What we kind of not did is instead, so we had this artificial timeline to hit for the students. So we launched, I think in July, we kind of started working on everything, and the student season is in August. Looking backwards, that didn't matter at all. We did in August, in our first months, we did 15,000, 20,000 or something. And I was the first month starting with 20,000 revenue, how cool. But then it dropped. Everything was towards students, and then 4 months, nothing happened. And we were okay, let's sit back. And I think this whole setting artificial timelines based on which you can't move because you have this milestone or this date which you can't influence, like students moving to university. I think that was really, really a big mistake. So I would have rather waited either another year or just waited another 2-3 months and not target students and just target something else, because again, we were towards or gravitating towards being this starter kit company, but because we tried to focus everything on students initially, we became kind of the student starter kit company. And that's actually what we did now just today, this rebranding, look a bit different, a bit more mature, and appeal to a different audience now. And I think not having this like the guts of saying, all right, we just skip this one event and just like take more time to prepare and then commit more resources into branding, into kind of like getting everything right, just then testing really fast. I'm a fan of testing, iterating fast. I like fail fast and learn fast. But I think we did it a bit too fast in the very end, and that kind of held us back. So we had to take another 3-4 months and kind of redo all the work we did in the 1.5 months before. And in the end, I think it just cost us way more time and resources than just doing it right from the beginning.
Makes sense. Hindsight's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And Tim, what was your biggest screw up?
It's interesting because obviously everything you do ends up to being where you are now, which I'm quite happy with. But I think really, you know, initially I really did find it difficult, particularly speaking to VCs, getting in like the amount of cash we needed. So I think, you know, it's hard to say because I think the more money you take in, you grow bigger and you sort of get further away potentially from the products. But, you know, I do sort of think, you know, if I went for a much higher valuation and raised a lot more money, would we be in a better position to really achieve what we wanted to do? And at the moment, we're taking sort of steps now where we've gone for a smaller round to then do a much bigger round after we can validate the next parts of our business, which might be right. But, you know, timing is always important in these things. So it's always sort of creeping on me whether, you know, we should have taken in a lot more cash. I think
it's easy to say we should have taken in a lot more cash, but it's not that easy to necessarily get it.
I don't think I could have. I tried to get it and I didn't get it. So maybe I should have tried more to get it, because we did, you know, we started trying to raise 5 million, then 2 million, then 3 million. Then we went down to like 500, then we went down to 300, and then we went back up to 500 as our growth has gone. So like we were always trying to do different. It was a very much like a learning curve trying to raise money. You know, there's a VC I spoke to early on. He was like, oh no, you're definitely worth like 5 or 6 million, I'd say at the moment. And like at the moment we're worth 3.5 million. So he didn't give me any money. So I don't know how serious he was with that. But that working out that game was quite difficult. And I think early on we definitely employed some quite expensive people who were, you know, they definitely added value into the company and we appreciate it. But in hindsight now, they ended up costing quite a lot. And it ended up being quite risky. We had to get rid of some people sort of midway through just because we took on some quite senior people who had a lot of like quite high salary expectations, and that was quite difficult to go through. But yeah, I think they're probably the two big things.
Yeah.
I have maybe a funny one, actually, really quick funny one.
Yeah.
We're working with physical goods, so we need a warehouse to transport them to, right? My co-founder Harvey once mixed up billing and delivery address. So a huge transport came to my apartment, and my girlfriend hates me until today. I'm not allowed to put any boxes in the apartment, but our entire apartment was full of stock, like cutlery, crockery, everything up to the ceiling. There was an entire van dumped, like one of those larger vans dumped into my apartment. And it was like 8 p.m. So our warehouse was closed, so they couldn't drop it anywhere else. So unfortunately, it was just a mix-up of billing and thought it was funny.
Quick to clarify, it wasn't your screw-up, it was Harvey's, but yeah.
Yeah, that's why I say it like this. Like this is like essentially every time something happened, it's like it's not as bad as the time you delivered all the stock to my place, rather than anything else. But I mean, hindsight, it's funny. In the moment, I mean, I thought it's funny. My girlfriend didn't think it's funny. But
I can imagine. I've got 2 more questions. One from Rajib, who said, how do you ignore the voice in your head that says, what's the point? Can we do that to Tim, even though it doesn't sound like you've had too much of that? I don't know.
Yeah, I think I just have, I don't really have any doubts, I guess. Like, I think definitely this thing's happening. I think we're in a really good position to push forward with it. And I mean, we've always had growth. There's always been a lot of hard work, but I've never felt like helpless or that point where we should quit. But I think it's just blind pushing forward and
bloody mindedness.
Yes.
Moritz, have you ever doubted yourself? Did you think, what's the point at any point?
I read this book at some point, like the book, I forgot the name, like every founder reads, what is that? 0 to 1, one of those shitty books. Everybody
0
tells,
to 1, yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember. Maybe it was this. Like one of those books everybody tells you, oh no, the Lean
Lean
The Lean
Startup.
Startup.
yeah, really good book, but I read it.
There's probably lots of people like who are thinking about doing startups, and you're like, all these shitty books. Some of them are quite good.
You know, when
but
you're
it's like everybody tells you, oh, you have to read this book, and then you're a founder, kind of. So I read this, and like at the very last kind of like couple of chapters, they talk about being stuck into mediocrity. I don't know if that's the right word.
Yeah.
Like having artificial success. So as an example, we could pay our salaries quite early on. We didn't take funding, and it all worked out nicely. And it was like, and I got this doubt of like, oh yeah, or is it a like hyper growth startup which can actually go to like 50, 100 million in revenue, or is it just something that that fluctuates around the 500,000, 1 million, which is not bad. Like, don't get me wrong, it's a good business, but is that what I want to build? So it was more like around how do we move forward? And that was at the time we only had the student box, which went really well. And then we kind of like iterated on like kitchen boxes, and the revenue was growing and growing and growing. So now our run rate is, or the revenue target actually, we go at like 2 point something million. So we see like growth without funding actually, and that goes quite fast. And we're still just limited by not having enough stock, essentially.
Yeah. But you have looked at debt rather than equity funding as well, haven't you?
Sorry again?
You've looked at debt rather than equity, haven't you?
Yeah, exactly. So now because we're profitable, it's a bit easier for us to get debt instead of having like some venture funding. We trade with investors, but essentially it was really similar story as you said. Everybody told us completely different things, and we're not really. I'm not really good at networking, so we actually talk mostly to VCs because you can find them easily online. We talked to lots of them, or they reached out. Like some of the biggest funds in Europe actually reached out to us, like the Index Venture reached out to us, Global Founders Capital. They all wanted to talk to us, and then we told them, I only need 350,000. That is how much we want to raise, and they like, like our minimum check size is $1 million. Do you want $1 million? I'm like, no. Like, and they're like, but we can give you $1 million. And I was
Tim
like,
would have bitten their hand off.
yeah, but I didn't want to give away that much equity. So for them, they wanted way too much equity for the $1 million. So they said something, I think like we had actually an offer at some point as well, but it's now over a year ago, which was really early on before we had them. At the time, we had like 50, 60,000 revenue, I think. And it was something around 100,000 for a $1 million evaluation. So 10%, which didn't sound too bad, but the term sheet was really, really rigid. It was really like not favorable for us. It was like kindergarten, not kindergarten, like someone who wants to babysit us. Like he had to sign off everything, board of director and everything, and sign off every expense over like 10K or something like that, which was a bit incredible. So then we went further and tried to raise through investors like VCs, but we were too small for most of them. So we were in this middle ground of like, all right, everybody tells us get angel investors. We don't know any angels. And then we were like, all right, fuck it, we just bootstrap. And it kind of worked out. I don't know.
So you're glad with that decision in retrospect now that you're sat on your big pile of equity?
I think if we actually could have raised at the moment I wanted. So we were last year, like November, we wanted to raise 350,000. If we could have raised.
Is that when, because you ran out of stock again, didn't you, at some point, where you could have sold more? Yeah,
so like that was after the student season. So we sold out like 2,500 boxes, starter kits, completely all gone. And we were like, if we have more capital, we could have sold more. And we want to build a team around. But then the whole fundraising process took so long, and it's so annoying. And I really hate networking because they're all bullshit. Like, not all of them. Some of those people, they like, oh yeah, your business should do this. Have you thought of this? And I'm like, yeah. So it's like what like Tim said at the beginning, find people who have done similar things. So there were really good advice from people who have done e-commerce, but there was very weird advice from people who have done deep tech or something like that and didn't understand the e-commerce component. I even talked with investors about Eve, and they told me Eve was a good investment. I'm like, how is that a good investment? The company is worth less than what they have in the bank account. So it's like, I don't understand the concept of that. Yeah, so now it's debt funding rather. It's not through yet, so we're actually supposed to hear back any moment if we get the loan through or debt funding, but fingers crossed.
Okay.
It's interesting because I think we live in that same space where it's like, yeah, that, you know, raising $500,000 or so, you definitely sit in that. You're just too small for VCs side of things as well, which is where we ended up. And yeah, it's definitely with investors as well. Like so many people we ended up speaking, didn't end up sort of matching our vision, or they thought it was too ambitious sides of things. So a lot of the VCs that ended up turning us down, it was either, or investors, it's because it was too much money, or they thought what we were aiming to do wasn't really what they wanted us to do either. So
yeah, and all the investors are trimmed on like one area, right? There's someone has like for biodegradable whatsoever e-commerce stuff, then there's someone for charitable aspect, deep tech and stuff. There's always very few investors who have exactly your focus, and then those investors are like huge funds which are just they say, yeah, minimum check size like 2 million or something, and like that, and you're like, I don't see the sense in 2 million. I mean, maybe for you it's different. You take more money because you can actually, for you it's all about that kind of like hitting the right timing, right, of like right now and scaling. For us, it's selling physical goods. I don't see a sense in a one-time purchase, like a kitchen starter pack, selling them to 1 million people if you make a minus. It just doesn't make any sense, really. For most businesses, there are repeat e-commerce businesses where it makes sense, but not for our business. And that's what investors always wanted, kind of. They're just like, yeah, just spend 1 million on Facebook and then we see what happens. And you're like, that's not really what we're aiming for. It was a shame.
Oh no, so what are you aiming for? Can you tell me when you're going to exit, who you're going to sell to, and for how much, Moritz?
Ah, fuck. Yeah, that's the question. That's always the question. So I always think of like when we build Noah, it's like building something which actually is profitable. So we don't have to exit just for the shareholders to actually have a payout in some form. So how it often works in this kind of world in e-commerce is often you have like some equity companies just taking a stake in the company. So you don't sell the entire company necessarily. Often they do, like to some companies who are in the background. So like Procter & Gamble, obviously, if you, not for us necessarily, but they always buy brands, like those huge companies buy other brands. And that's a potential that can happen. So like someone just buying the brand by itself, or you just, if you're profitable the entire time, you actually, so our profitability is quite high. So we can get out with net profit of like 30% if you do it right, if not higher. So like after.
So when do you become, when are you a startup and when are you just a business?
Yeah, exactly. So that's a question, right? I don't have the answer to that, but that's like what I often trying to say is like, we're just a profitable business. Obviously, we're super young, we're super ambitious. We believe we can do easily 50 million in revenue. So this year we're aiming for 2 million. Again, mostly limited by stock, and we're just in the UK. If you look at the US market, just for students, it's 15 times as large, just for students, because the country is just so much larger, right? And it has a really similar structure of going to dorms and stuff. So there is growth potential, don't get me wrong. So I think we can do high revenue numbers, but I don't see the necessary need of like just doing something like WeWork does or something where we just burn through money to get market share. It just doesn't exist for us. And I think that's fair enough. If you look at other brands, like the large brands everybody knows, like Nike, even Zara or something, they always operated profitable on a unit economics base, obviously not on a business base. Even Amazon, like on a unit economics base, they are profitable, and they have been for endless amount of years, but they're never profitable as a company because they acquire Twitch or do other things, which are good investments.
Or QuizKit, yeah. Codices.
Yeah.
So actually, Moritz, so you're looking for more of a strategic investor potentially. You're not going for an IPO or anything like that. It'd be a strategic buyout where you'd maybe keep some equity, but they would add value and probably, I don't know, double or triple the value of the business just through the relationship or something.
Yeah, they're as an example, they're the kitchenware. Like if you just look at kitchenware, it's really weird. But it's like the universe we strangely got in contact with. But the kitchenware providers in like some of them, they are like having revenue of like 20-25 billion, and they just sell saucepans. But they provide the entire world with saucepans. And those companies, I think, are potential investors, or like just taking equity in there because it makes sense for them, because they don't sell through us their saucepans, and it's a win-win for them. So it's this kind of weird kind of world we live in with e-commerce, where you maybe have a strategic partner rather than just venture capital necessarily.
They just want to buy the channel, really, and then open it up.
Exactly. In some cases, it's a potential. Hard to tell, obviously.
And Tim, when are you exiting? How much? Who to? IPO?
Yeah, I mean, the way I always think about it is that if we can get to that 100 million target in 10 years of revenue, I think if you look at other live streaming services and things in Asia particularly, they are all generating profit now. So I don't feel like that's out of this world. All the acquisitions are so crazy. Like Twitter bought Vine before they launched for like 20 million, and Google bought YouTube as well a few years, like less than a year into it. And like, if you look at a lot of the video streaming startups, they get bought up quite quickly. It's so hard to sort of predict. I think so. For us, I'd love to build something that eventually IPOs. But I think particularly when we look at because there's so many acquirers in the space we're in, and no one's really targeting it heavily yet. I think there's definitely lots of options for it. But in terms of like my focus and what it's doing, it's just still getting us to, if we can get us to like a profitable point, and have some real valuable IP and shows and tech in there, then I think we'll be happy. I don't think my investors would be super happy if we sold for less than like 50 million, probably.
Be all right if it was over that. Yeah. All right. Well, on that, do you have any advice to anyone about what to do if you're thinking about setting up a business, or your early stage startup business, or growth stage even? What would you say? Go out. What's the best piece of advice you've been given?
I always think, obviously from the e-commerce perspective, just go for it. It doesn't have to be like, lots of people always wait for the perfect idea, right? So we didn't came up with the idea first. We were like, all right, we want to found a business. What is like a good business to look at? And then just doing it, even if you don't think this is like the best idea you ever have, just a learning experience of going through it once. I've learned in the last 2 years so much I have never done before. Even like stuff like accounting, it killed me in the first 6 months. But it's like really, really valuable. And you can do it by just, let's say you open a Shopify store right now and you say, all right, I make a business. It doesn't have to be the business you define your life around. Just start something small. And then even if you scrap it in 6 months and you have invested 2,000 in it, 5,000 in it, you're like, if you do a master, that costs here in the UK, like, what is it, 20,000 or something like that. You charge for your education here, obviously. We don't in Germany. But instead of doing a master, you can just start a business. If it fails, you lost a little bit of not a little bit, 5,000 is still reasonable sum. But you lose the money, but you have so many, kind of like you learn so much, which is actually way more valuable than just jumping with your best idea directly in, and then you have to learn everything when you have a great idea. You can do some preparation by just starting small projects or small businesses beforehand and see how it all comes together.
So ignore that voice in your head saying no, and just dive in and do it and learn.
Yeah. I always say, like, if Noah's box wouldn't have worked out, it's at the beginning.
It's Noah now.
Sorry?
Just Noah now.
Yeah, Noah, yeah, true. I have to get used to it. But if Noah wouldn't have worked out, at the beginning we spent like 20,000 or something, and I always said, oh, that's the cost of a master here in the UK. So I learned more than in a master, fair enough. So that's how I always compare it. It's like spending your money on education is the same as founding a startup. And if it fails, you lose 10, 20,000. It's a lot of money, yes, but you would have spent the same going to Cambridge or somewhere else, and someone would have just told you how to fund a business rather than you doing it. Yeah,
and better to regret doing it rather than not doing it. How about yourself, Tim?
I think you want to. For me, it's like there's obviously there's like the monetary rewards, and everyone talks about exiting and selling for lots of cash, which is the goal. And I think having a big successful company is it's like the end goal of producing something that actually is something that people really want and that is really useful. And for me, it's, if it's for us, it's more a lot about the idea. I always loved games. I loved watching YouTube. I always spend way too much time on social media things. So for me, it was just like, for starting Codices, just a chance to really jump into it and start making all the stuff I've always sort of wanted to do. And it's sort of that drive and that energy I get from just being able to come and do this stuff every day, which helps push stuff forward. So I mean, it really depends what you want out of it. But yeah, if you find something that you're passionate about and you push ahead with, just tell people about it, and then find the right people. So like, we flew to LA, met the CEO of Twitch to like validate our idea a bit, and then eventually got something back through that. Like, just think of what you want, create a cool pitch deck, and then try and find people to give you money, I would say. Because I didn't have
easy as that.
Yeah.
As easy as that. Well, thank you both. That's been very insightful. Good for good to hear it from a slightly different perspective. Yeah, thanks a lot.
Yeah, no worries. Looking forward to do it in person one day, maybe.
I know,
some pizza and beer rather than online.
Pizza, at the Vitamin Studio next time. But thanks a lot. Yeah, if there's any questions, Kendall, Diego, Charlotte, and me. And yeah, is that it, Charlotte?
I'll meet myself. Yeah, no, thanks for coming, and thanks to Tim and Moritz as well for joining us on our first one ever. Apologies for some technical delays. This is our first time doing it. We'll get used to it. Yeah, thank you both for coming and joining us.
No worries.
Thanks a lot.
That's great.
It was my pleasure.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.